Fridays. This is we're going to be our weekly dedicated college football segment. Last week's was University of Washington. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out. It's a great video. You're going to be surprised by some of the numbers we talked about with them. They went 11-2. Just a little teaser of that. But we actually kind of took three college eligible or draft eligible quarterbacks in this it's coming up with this 2024 draft. And we actually looked at some of their tape and saw, we put on our NFL scouting hats and saw what did we think these guys can do? What's their ceilings? What's their strengths? What are our thoughts about them? So to start it off, and this is all kind of this idea was based on the PFF chart that had the top 10 draft eligible quarterbacks coming up into this draft. So the first one that we wanted to talk about was Bo Nix. So good old Bo. So Bo Nix is not a new name to most people. People watched him at Auburn when he beat Alabama, and now people have watched him when he's transferred to Oregon. PFF had him as his number 3 quarterback coming into this draft. And we actually ran a poll earlier in the week that got some votes. Where we gave people the option of you can either predict if you think he's going to be a high-end starter, an average starter, a low-end starter, high backup, or just a low backup. And low starter, high-end backup actually was almost a runaway. I think it was 38% of the vote went to that selection. Yeah. Which actually, when we started watching the film, did align very similar with what we expected to see from that. But when we actually turned the tape on, we saw a much different player than I think me or you really expected. So for the context, we went and watched Bo Nix's 2022 highlight tape. Not just any average game. We weren't pulling up, hey, we cherry-picked this one. These were plays that fans thought this is what this guy did best last year. And we wanted to break down what we saw, what were his strengths, what were his weaknesses, what happened. And so what we kind of came away with is his strengths are that he keeps his eyes downfield. He likes to attack 20-plus yards down the field. I think the majority, or at least we commented the first 5 or 6 plays were just strictly him throwing deep balls.
Deep bombs.
Deep ball, 30, 40-yard balls, and they were strikes. Yeah. He probably is going to have one of the best deep balls in the draft, if not the best. We haven't watched Caleb Williams' film. We haven't watched Drake May's film. But just from what we saw, he has to have one of the best, if not the best deep ball in the draft. He's a very athletic dude. He doesn't have breakaway speed, but he's got good speed. He's got speed that will translate to the NFL. So he's the kind of guy, so as a fan, for your kind of perspective, as you're watching the game, to think, well, what are you guys talking about? It's not going to translate. He's the kind of guy that when he's on the opposing team and he breaks out of the pocket, you're thinking, fuck, when are they going to get him? How much is he going to get this time? Why is there no linebackers around? Where is everybody? Where's the defense? That's what you're going to kind of experience and yell at your TV when he takes off. He's not going to break away. Once he, he's not going to outrun Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields does. He's not going to outrun the entire defense, but he'll pick up 20 yards and slide or get out of bounds. He has a strong arm, and he's really, really good at throwing on the run. We watched a couple where he was rolling right through it back across his body left and was still a dime 30 or 40 yards down the field, which is a much harder skill and throw than most people, I think, realize. But he is fantastic at it. The thing we wanted to see more of, because I think there's only two clips of it in the entire highlight tape, it was about a 5-minute highlight tape, was him hitting more of those little layup throws, the 10 yards or less throws. There's only 2 of them, and they went for touchdowns, and they were I think in the red zone anyway. They were, yeah. And I think that kind of when you think of Bo Nix, what you hear a lot of talk about Bo Nix is he has a consistency issue. Oh, he's not always consistent. Oh, sometimes he's great, sometimes he's not. And I think that's where it kind of stems of is we need to see him hit, or we would like to see him hit more of those layups, setting those guys up for big yak plays, turning that slant into a 20, 30-yard gain rather than having to throw it through the air for 20 or 30 yards. That can be the difference between converting a 3rd and 5 or it being 4th down, because you're not going to always be able to just huck it up every time. So we would like to see that more from him this year. As for a draft grade, currently right now from what we saw, we see him as a high upside, low floor guy. If he can get the layup thing figured out, he could be a high-end starter. If he can't, he'll never be better than a low-end starter, maybe a backup. We have him as a as a draft grade, we have him as a low first, high second currently. So he's a team that if you're like, or you got a winning team and you're willing to take a risk on a guy in the future, this is probably the guy that you might want to take a chance on.
Yeah.
So
no, and that was a great breakdown. And after watching his highlight tape, I like him a lot more than what I first did. I didn't realize, maybe just because I just didn't watch a whole lot of Oregon games last season, but he really showed out. Like and to your point, when you're like run down the field, he might not be fast, but dude, he is big. Like people don't understand, he's a big boy. So if you're a safety, 30 yards deep, and you see him running, like, dude, I don't know if I want to, hey, come on, you know what I mean?
I'll make a business decision here. I'm just gonna dive out the way there.
Exactly. But Emmett, I do have to follow up, and it's kind of a tough question, and it's kind of unfair, so I am sorry. But today, as of right now, right, what would you say is Bo Nix's NFL QB comp?
Ooh, okay, so for that, I'm going to take that. So I'm going to look at his strengths. So I'm not saying whatever player I come upon. I'm not saying, oh, he is this guy. I'm saying what their strengths are, what they do really well, are very similar. Now, obviously, there's going to be varying degrees of how well they do it and what their weaknesses are. For me, Bo Nix, the best comp I can come up with is Russell Wilson. Okay. Russell Wilson coming out of Wisconsin, great at throwing the deep ball. I mean, go back and watch his 2013, 2014 highlights. It was all deep balls to Tyler Lockett or deep balls to Doug Baldwin. I just remember being a 49ers fan. Just every time you watch him, you're like, how did he throw that ball, 50 yards down the field on a dime? Think of the Fail Mary versus the Packers, and I think it was 2014.
Yeah.
Or every time he would take off, he wasn't like super athletic. He wasn't like breaking ankles and stuff back then once he got past the line of scrimmage. But every time he took off, you're like, where is anybody? Can someone just get this freaking dude? Come on, dude. Where is it? Where are you guys? And he just runs out of bounds up to 35 yards. You're like, fuck me, dude. Yeah. It's a 2-minute drill. It's the fourth quarter. What are we doing? Where are you guys? Like, why don't we have a quarterback spy? Because he's just so goddamn good at evading in the pocket, making a couple of dudes miss, and then taking off or just hugging it down the field. It's kind of like just another comparison. Watching his highlights felt like watching Wilson this way as well. Every time he threw the ball down the field, you're like, that's a catch. I don't know where it is. I can't see it on the camera. I don't know where it's going on the field. That's a catch. And every time, sure as shit, it's a catch. It felt like that. There's never one like with Bo Nix, and obviously it was a highlight tape, but there's never one you were watching thinking, oh, this is going to be the receiver, had to like one hand this ball. And it was, nope, every time it was just right here. Great ball over here, great ball over there, wherever it was just right on the money of where it should have been.
That is so true. And when he first said Russell Wilson, I wasn't sure how I felt about that. But now that you say all that, I just have flashbacks of like Wilson's early days with the Seahawks. Kind of what you said, read option, getting 15 yards a pop, or like the bootleg. He's rolling out right, just chuck it deep. One of those his famous like moon shot balls, right? Yeah. I can see Bo doing that. I definitely can. Yeah. No, I think that's a pretty fair comp, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the huge difference between the two that we'll need to see if it changes and gets cleaned up is Russell Wilson was also pretty good at hitting the short stuff too. He was able to get the 3rd and 5s and get what he needed to as well. We'll need to see if Bo can clean that up and do that as well and do it at a high consistency rate or not. But again, that's just the comp. Again, I'm not saying, oh, he's Russell Wilson. I'm saying that they have similar strengths.
Yep.
Right. Like this, sure. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Josh Allen with a powerful arm, but that he fits more to like what Russell Wilson could kind of do.
Yeah, that's fair.